Good morning, AmeriCorps VISTA supervisors. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I will be facilitating this morning's webinar. We might have some new folks on the line. My name is Marianne Sharochinsky, and I'm the program officer that largely supports Southeast and South Florida. And in addition, my colleague Melissa will be providing support by keeping track of questions in the chat box. Please feel free to ask questions throughout today's call, and we'll also have a time for questions at the end of the call. As we get started, please don't forget to mute your phone or computer microphone to improve the quality of today's call. And as always, we'll be recording today's webinar, so folks who cannot join for today's session right now when it's being delivered can review it at a later date. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, just another quick reminder, we're getting a little bit of feedback from somebody's computer or phone, so please do make sure that you have muted whatever device you're using so we can have a good quality call. All right, so we have a very packed agenda this morning. We will begin with a key staffing update here at our office. We'll then move on to some topics relevant to the implementation of CNCS's transformation and sustainability plan, including preparing for transition to the new regional structure and national service criminal history check enforcement changes. Then my colleagues Melissa and Julius will spotlight a few best practices and reminders regarding AmeriCorps VISTA program management, including recruitment best practices, VISTA leader requirements, VISTA criminal history checks, and change of status for VISTA members, which have to happen within 24 hours. And then we'll close out the call by discussing disaster protocols, the VISTA cost of living adjustment, VISTA sponsor convening, 9/11 Day of Service, and the upcoming National Service 25th Anniversary milestone. We'll open today's call by sharing an important staffing update from our office. I will turn the call over to our State Program Director, Billy Lewis.
Thank you, Marianne. Can everyone hear me okay? Am I coming through? Okay,
yes,
perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So good morning, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining us on this call. We don't pretend to know and understand how busy your schedules are, and the fact that you are here shows that you see that these calls as a valuable source of information and technical assistance. So once again, thank you. Lots of changes happening within the agency. I know many of you, are aware of our transformation and sustainability, which is of course causing a lot of shifting, good shifting, within our agency as far as staff and programs as well as locations. So one of the biggest changes that's coming very soon is that effective August 5th, I will be transitioning to our headquarters to support the Office of Regional Operations as a senior advisor to our Director on Training and Knowledge Management. It is absolutely bittersweet for me. Some of you may or may not know, I started my national service journey as a VISTA member way back when with Florida Campus Compact, serving as a VISTA supervisor with communities and schools of Florida. Glad to see that those programs are still with us before I joined the corporation as a program officer. So I've pretty much championed this work as a volunteer, as a grantee, as well as a staff of this agency. And I'm grateful for what I've been able to do. I'm grateful for what I do, but it's really because of the work that you all do. You all continue to inspire me daily. The stories that we hear, the metrics that you turn in, just the evolution of your programs are really what keeps me going and what makes me a champion for our work and for Florida. Even though I will be far away, I'll still be very close by and be very much in touch with the work that you do, just at a completely different level. So it's been my absolute pleasure to have been able to serve you, not just as a state program director or program officer, but again, as a volunteer and a former member of your cohort. I'm really moved by the work that's accomplished in the field. I'm moved by the impact that we have on the members, the communities in which you serve, and then, of course, your agencies. And I'll continue to be a voice for national service, particularly a voice for AmeriCorps VISTA, which is probably one of our most unique programs within the agency because it is the only national service program with an exclusive focus on anti-poverty. And although we have some programs that focus on capacity building, we don't have any that focus on it quite like AmeriCorps VISTA. It's a unique model, and hopefully you all are receiving the benefit and value the benefit that the program has to offer, and that we continue to do great things with our national service volunteers. So, Florida is always home for me. I'm a Florida girl through and through. Hope to make my way back. But in the meantime, I want to be able to make sure that you all receive the quality technical assistance and customer service that you deserve. I want to be able to champion the work that you all do and make sure that you're adequately resourced. That includes the human resource that you're receiving right now. So, that is pretty much the purpose of me being able to transition to this particular position so that I can help shape the next generation of program officers, or portfolio managers rather, in the field. But I'm looking forward to seeing many of you at the convening just here in just shy of 2 weeks, and reconnecting with many of you and hearing about some of your successes as well as your challenges. And then, of course, my email and contact information is still the same. Please feel free to reach out to me should you need anything. And I wish you all the best of luck. I know you'll do great things. I'm very proud of the work that you have done, and I'll continue to be proud of the work that you all do in Florida. And I'll see you all soon. Back to you, Marianne.
Thank you, Billy, for your many years at CNCS and also for your leadership at our office during our team's tenure as program officers in the Florida State Office. You will be dearly missed. Next, I would like to focus our attention on some of the changes that are on the horizon over the next year. I will recap some of the changes that have already occurred to date, since some of our supervisors are newer to the AmeriCorps VISTA program. Over the course of the last year, CNCS leadership has worked to develop and implement the agency's transformation and sustainability plan, which Billy has already referenced. The plan is designed to modernize our agency, strengthen our operations, and improve the customer service provided to our grantees and sponsors. Part of this plan includes the closure of the Florida State Office in Orlando, Florida. Under the previous model, our agency relied on a field structure of offices located at the state level. Under the Transformation and Sustainability Plan, CNCS's current field structure is being replaced by a regional model. The new department will be called the Office of Regional Operations. The Florida portfolio will be part of this Southeast region, pictured here on this slide. The new regional office will be based in Atlanta, Georgia. This region will also include Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. This region is slated to be staffed in early 2020. We wanted to spend a portion of the call today underscoring the importance of preparing for this transition. It is likely that your new portfolio manager will not be your current program officer. About 9 months from now, it is likely that your primary contact person at CNCS will no longer be myself or my other colleagues from the Florida State Office. We wanted to share 3 important steps that you can take to ensure that your project is in a strong position during the implementation of the Transformation and Sustainability Plan. First, please ensure that your program officer has up-to-date contact information for your project. The key roles are listed here on this slide. This is one of the most important pieces of information we'll be sharing with the regional office. In addition, we recommend that projects conduct a self-audit using our VISTA compliance monitoring tool as a guide to help ensure that sponsors have strong organizational systems and compliant practices at their agency. As always, if you have questions about VISTA requirements or regulations, please reach out to your program officer. And we'll be sending out a copy of this compliance monitoring guide as part of the follow-up materials from today's call. And finally, as the state office prepares for operational closure, program officers will be completing case notes for transition to the regional model. If there's specific information about your project or agency, maybe something specific about how recruitment works, the steps that are needed in order to sign the memorandum of agreement, any notes about cost share, any information that you would like your new portfolio manager to be aware of immediately once they assume oversight of your project, please be sure to share this information with your program officer. I wanted to pause here briefly for questions. Melissa, do we have anything in the chat box about transformation and sustainability or the changes that are coming ahead?
At this time, we have nothing in the chat, but I do encourage everyone to either write in the chat or ask a question over the phone if you do have a question at this time.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Folks may have a question come to mind about this topic during our Q&A period at the end of the call. Please feel free to ask about this topic later as well. Next, I wanted to spend some time on another topic relevant to CNCS's Transformation and Sustainability Plan. And these are changes regarding National Service Criminal History Check compliance. This may be a topic that sounds like something completely new to many people on the call, and that is fine, because this topic does not apply to all VISTA projects. Specifically, this topic applies to sponsors who receive support grant funding from CNCS. So this means that in your budget, on the federal share, there is money allocated for a VISTA supervisor. So if that is true, this applies to you. But if you do not receive any federal dollars from CNCS for a supervisor's salary, this topic is not applicable to your project. So I wanted to highlight how the agency's Office of the Chief Risk Officer recently unveiled a CNCS's new National Service Criminal History Check Guide to Enforcement Action, and it went into effect on July 1st, 2019. And just wanted to preface this portion of the presentation by saying that this guide is as new to us as it is to you all as VISTA supervisors. And so I may be able to answer some of your questions, but others I might need to reference the detailed written information or consult with the Office of the Chief Risk Officer. So Melissa will be helping me to keep track of questions, and we'll be sure to follow up in writing after the call, in particular about any questions relating to National Service Criminal History checks that are completed on VISTA supervisors whose salary are supported by CNCS dollars. So some high-level things to keep in mind. The guide, it changes CNCS's enforcement action regarding NSCHC noncompliance. So that means if a VISTA supervisor's National Service Criminal History check was not completed correctly, a CNCS monitoring official now has new guidance about what actions to take whenever that noncompliance is detected. However, the guide does not change the legal requirements for national service criminal history checks. The underlying legislation and regulations governing what checks need to be completed has not changed. So one key change to CNCS's enforcement action is an approach called cost-based disallowance. Now, you may be asking yourself, what exactly does this mean? And so, as defined in the new enforcement guide, cost-based disallowance refers to the disallowance of costs associated with an eligible individual's work or service during the period of noncompliance, and that includes salary costs and FICA. In other words, the disallowed costs would be equal to the VISTA supervisor's salary and FICA during the period of noncompliance. I have a little bit of information here about how the amount would be calculated. Basically, after the period of noncompliance is identified, the sponsor would run a payroll or an accounting system report to identify the total amount of funds expended on salary or FICA and FICA during the time period of noncompliance. But in general, the cost of the disallowance will not exceed 6 months. This is a significant change from CNCS's most recent approach to NSEHC enforcement, and it underscores the high priority that the agency is placing on national service criminal history check compliance. I have here noted on this slide a few other actions that CNCS will take based on the type of noncompliance that is detected. That includes the use of CNCS-approved contracts with TrueScreen and FieldPrint. It could also impact future awards, place your grant on manual hold, or restrict your access to funds, and then it could also lead to grant suspension and termination. One of the most important resources on this topic are what has been published for self-paced review. So I have a link to the CHC enforcement page, and I'll also this will also be part of the materials sent out after the call. And so on this page, most importantly, is the guide itself that outlines in greater detail some of the steps that I've highlighted. So I don't expect everybody on this call to have questions about this topic because, again, it only applies to projects that receive federal funding for VISTA supervisor salaries. But given how important of a topic it is, I did want to pause here and to see if we did have any questions from the audience on this topic.
This is Mary Matthews. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm on my cell phone. I don't have a picture. My question is on that subject. I just took a field print check for foster grandparents because that's under our umbrella too. Would that still apply to my VISTA, or do I have to do it over again for VISTA?
That is a great question. In my experience with evaluating grants, with evaluating national service criminal history checks, what matters is the timing, and that the timing aligns with the requirements and not necessarily that check results get assigned to a specific grant number.
So if I just did it
yes.
like 2 weeks ago, would I have to do it again? Because I just
right.
did it 2 weeks ago.
Right, exactly. So, so what I will do is I will consult and see if any of the FAQs already address that question specifically. And then if it doesn't, I'll do some more digging just to get that confirmation for you.
Thank you. Go in mute now.
I'm sorry, I'm chiming in. This mute button on my headset is ridiculous sometimes. You know, as many of you know, we just completed an exemption period for the National Service criminal history checks. And so for those of you who this applies to, hopefully you took advantage of that opportunity. So provided you conducted the checks within the time frame and per the guidance with the correct vendors, the checks were properly adjudicated, then you should not have any non-compliance issues. Again, provided you did it within the time frame and you did it per the guidance with the appropriate vendors. When we're talking about checks, background checks, and as Marianne said, some of that is addressed in the FAQs. It is not necessarily a check per grant. Some of you work for agencies whose existing background checks meet the qualifications of the National Service Criminal History Check. And so for those that may, based on your review of the guidance, based on your HR's review of the guidance, you will find that your checks are already in line with the requirements. Of course, there is adjudication that needs to be done. Of course, the results of the National Service Criminal History Check should be done as well. So provided your agency's background check requirements are in line and meet the requirements of the National Service Criminal History Check, you do not have to keep redoing the check for each of our different grant programs. I hope that clarifies and answers your question, Mary.
Thank you. That's quite helpful.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Billy. Do we have any other questions relating to National Service Criminal History checks? And again, these are checks on VISTA supervisors.
Hi, Marianne. This is Melissa. Just to give you an update, there are no questions in the chat, but I do encourage people to put a question in the chat if you do want to do that way, or ask a question over the phone.
Thank you so much, Melissa. We'll go ahead and move on for now, but if anyone would like to revisit this topic again at the end of the call, we can go ahead and do that. So for this slide, I will go ahead and turn it over once more to my colleague, Melissa Hartung.
Hi, everyone. So just a quick encouragement / recap of recruitment best practices. We know that all of you work very hard on finding, good quality candidates for your programs to support the things that you do. And so we wanted to do a quick overview of some strategies that you can put in place to help find the right people. So recruitment strategies, making sure that you're promoting within your community, also making sure that you're tapping into local resources such as colleges, university, technical schools, also looking at the local workforce development organizations such as Goodwill, CareerSource, or EmployU, and most important of all, other national service programs. AmeriCorps VISTA is not the only national service program that there is. There are several different types of national service programs. We encourage you to educate yourself on what those are and reach out to those individuals who already have done national service before. Some in-house strategies that you can use, engage your sub-sites. If you have sites all over the state of Florida, encourage them to use the networks that they have to find good quality candidates. Your currently serving VISTAs have a plethora of information and resources and networks to their advantage, so make sure that you use them in the process of finding the next VISTA member, or have them reach out to their networks to be able to find eligible candidates. Also leveraging your agency's volunteer pool. A lot of people don't know about AmeriCorps VISTA, and it's very important that you educate the people who are already engaged within your organization to let them know that this is an opportunity. So currently serving volunteer could potentially be a great VISTA candidate. And most importantly, the power of word of mouth. You have to let people know that this opportunity is available. I know we do a lot of notifications of these opportunities online through certain portals, but sometimes it's important to maybe print up a little flyer or posting it on your agency's website, making sure that people know that these opportunities are available. So get out there, get recruiting. The end of the fiscal year 19 is coming to an end, so a lot of you have open slots, so we want to encourage you to reach full capacity before the end of the fiscal year. Back to you, Mary Ann.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing some additional information about how VISTA projects can effectively engage in recruitment. Now, for the next few slides, I will turn over the presentation to one of my other colleagues, Julius Smiley. Julius, take it away.
All right. Hello and good morning, everyone. Just want to go over a few quick reminders when it comes to VISTA leader requirements. As you all know that a couple of years ago, or for those who have been around and then those who are new, with our AmeriCorps VISTA leaders, you do have an opportunity to recruit from other national service programs. We definitely encourage that, as all national service counts and the experience is very useful, but there are definitely some things that kind of need to be done beforehand to ensure that the VISTA leaders are actually, that the candidates that you are selecting are actually eligible, excuse me, getting tongue-tied, are actually eligible for the VISTA leader position. So first things first, what you want to do here is definitely and always check for criminal history. You know, that's something that you should see in your egrants screen when you go in there to look at the applicant's application. You see that in the questionnaire background. You want to check for that information. If there is something there, definitely ensure that you receive documentation up front, and that you also write up a narrative to support the VISTA leader after you interview them, once you have received the documentation from the member. You also want to ensure that you receive verification of the applicant's previous service term if they did come from another program, or even if they are coming from AmeriCorps VISTA year. You just want to ensure that you verify their service term, especially before interviewing the applicant. We've had a lot of current issues here to where we've had some VISTA leaders placed into that position, and they technically weren't eligible because all these steps weren't done. So this will help in the process to ensure that when it comes to recruiting VISTA leaders, that you're getting candidates that can actually work for your project. So when it comes for AmeriCorps VISTA members, if they want to serve as a VISTA leader, all they need to do is just complete one full year service term. If they served in a state and national AmeriCorps program, then they need to have completed at least 1,700 hours. And if they are coming from Peace Corps, they need to have completed at least a full Peace Corps term. And it's very important to note that when you are looking for your VISTA leaders, it's very important to remember that VISTA leaders serve in a strong role when it comes to supporting our VISTA members. This requires our leaders to definitely be strong when it comes to emotional and professional maturity, having good judgment, supporting the recruitment and project management of the project, you know, ensuring that the VISTA member is truly used to help to broaden the tasks and duties of the supervisor, and that you actually have a member who's capable of handling all those tasks. So definitely please keep these things in mind when it comes to recruiting for your VISTA leaders. Are there any questions? All right, if there are not any questions, I'll go on to the next slide. Next, again, we love talking about our criminal history checks and the requirements and things that need to be done to ensure that we are in compliance. So again, we can't stress these reminders enough. You need to ensure that the documentation that you receive from a VISTA member, if they do have criminal history, it is collected. It is 100% required. This is something that we need. This is something that can be a final court disposition, or it can just be a brief summary, and also a brief summary of support from the VISTA supervisor. Then also we need to know about the criminal history disclosure. If the VISTA member does not disclose their criminal background, the state office will be unable to support the member. So it's very important that you give a preface while you're interviewing the member, even if it's not listed on their application that they have criminal background history, that if there is something that exists, that they do note it and they do report it, because if the FBI check comes back that the member did not disclose this information, there's nothing that we can do to support the member. And we hate for you all to have done so much work to find a member and to go through the process of onboarding them, all to find out later that the VISTA member has to be removed from the project. So you want to ensure that you're giving that preference to your VISTA members when you're recruiting as well, if there is criminal history checks and when it comes to criminal history checks. And then also, just a special note on arrest, be sure to gather final court dispositions for any charges that did not lead to a conviction. Be proactive. The more documentation that we have for any arrest or anything is helpful to ensure that the process for onboarding the member clears through our requirements for VISTA members when it comes to clearing their eligibility for criminal history checks. Are there any questions with that?
Julius, Mary Matthews here. I'd like to throw in on top of the CNCS requirements that if you are partnering with other subsites, they have their own set of criminal history checks, and a lot of them are level 2. We've had VISTAs clear the CNCS background check and fail the level 2 background checks with the organization. Actually they had to release a member because of that, and then we had to try and place that member with another group. But just everybody be warned that if you are dealing with organizations that do their own background checks in addition, that the level 2 background check is not really user friendly, and it doesn't tell you why in a lot of cases that they were denied. So we have had to deal with that in our program.
Thank you for that information, Mary. That's definitely something that people should look out for as well. Ensuring that if your subsites, if you're an intermediary sponsor, if they have additional background screenings that they want their members to go through before serving as their project, ensuring that your members or candidates that you're trying to select to be a member at that site can actually meet the requirements for that. Again, being proactive when it comes to these things are useful. We are not discouraging anyone from criminal history and joining our programs and national service, but the documentation must be noted.
Julius, I just wanted to chime in for a second because I really want to emphasize what Julius is saying to you all. We have had a couple of issues just in the past 6 months in this area, and the reason why this is so difficult is because, one, we know the time that you all invest in trying to recruit and onboard candidates, get them trained, and get them going, and it's very difficult when it's 60 days into their service, when we get an FBI report that's come back with something that they did not disclose or did not disclose fully, or because the application does not ask if a member's been arrested. They've asked if the candidate's been convicted. And so in some cases, we've had some FBI reports come back with arrests that do not have a final court disposition. And so when Julius is saying be proactive, folks, I can't stress that enough. Because the application does not ask about arrests, that may be something you just want to inform the applicant. Obviously, we can't force or ask anyone to to tell us if they've been arrested, especially if it's not resulted in a conviction, but at the very least informing them that if they've been arrested in the past, they may want to go ahead and gather the documentation related to that arrest, so that if it does come back on that FBI report, they have everything needed to clear them. Because what I would hate for is if you have somebody who was arrested and the charges were dropped, we have to put them on administrative hold for 30 days while they, figure out with the clerk of court how to get documentation, how quickly they can get it. It's better for them to be proactive and gather that documentation before it comes back on an FBI check. And they can, of course, disclose it if they want to when they send in their fingerprints. But, that and having individuals who are failing to disclose criminal history, which does not bar you from service so long as they're not murder or sex offense. But it's been very time-consuming, belaboring, and I know difficult for you all and disruptive for you all in trying to meet your performance measures. So this is something that I think you all should definitely spend a good amount of time with, both in writing when you communicate with candidates, as well as the interview or even during the final selection process, so that this doesn't become a disruption within their year of service and within your project year.
Yes, thank you, Billy, for that additional information as well. Are there any questions? All right, if there's nothing, you can either wait for the end of the call or we'll just go on to the next slide. Next thing that's also kind of come up here with some of our projects that we want to highlight is with reporting the change of status for our VISTA members. It's important to note that all of you all have signed a memorandum of agreement with CNCS that explicitly states some requirements for supervisors when it comes to reporting the change of status for VISTA members. So we just wanted to highlight that today as a reminder, because we really don't want to have any issues with any overpayments for VISTA members. So this definitely ensures that we prevent any issues that can occur, and we are just ensuring that we are in compliance with everything that we both have agreed to. So the first thing about the memorandum of agreement that it states when it comes to the change of status for VISTA members that I want to highlight today is just when it comes to making any reports to the CNCS state office, if there are any unscheduled absences or if a VISTA member decides to leave from your project for any member or early termination, that must be reported within 24 hours to the state office. 24 hours to the state office. I just want to repeat that again. It's something that we definitely need to know about so that we can make the appropriate steps to ensure that the member is exited from the program at the appropriate time. The next thing I want to highlight is that when it comes to the reporting requirements for the sponsor verification form, that they should be completed on a bi-weekly basis. And it's even better and recommended that the sponsor complete and submit the sponsor verification form within 3 work days of receipt, just to confirm which AmeriCorps VISTA members remain active during the previous pay period, and also to see which AmeriCorps VISTA members left service at the sponsor during the previous pay period. So this is something that we also want to ensure that we highlight as well. Again, we've had a few issues occur with some of our projects, and it's nothing wrong, but we like to provide reminders because we really like to avoid any issues when it comes to any overpayments for our VISTA members. Okay, are there any questions? All right, if not, I'll go on to the next slide. All right, and for the next slide, I'll hand it back to you, Marianne.
Thank you so much, Julius. The reminders that you shared are very important pieces of information that VISTA supervisors should keep in mind in the management of their projects. All right, so the remainder of our presentation will cover a number of topics that are relevant to AmeriCorps VISTA projects as we move through the second half of 2019. The first relates to the fact that we are now well into hurricane season with two named storms having already formed in the Atlantic. One topic to keep in mind is the protocol for what AmeriCorps VISTA members should do in the case of an emergency situation, such as a hurricane. So when an emergency situation arises that poses a potential or actual threat to life or property, a VISTA is expected to abide by the following instructions. Follow orders or recommendations from the state or local authorities regarding the need to evacuate an area. Seek shelter and contact the state office and project supervisor to notify them of the VISTA's location. So after an event occurs, the corporation state office may approve up to 5 days of emergency leave if a natural disaster requires that the VISTA leave the site. And this emergency leave does not count against a VISTA's personal leave time. And then as a higher level than that, if a VISTA cannot return to the project site after 5 business days, the state office places the VISTA on administrative hold for up to 30 days. The VISTA continues to receive a living allowance during this time. The VISTA may use this time to seek an assignment at another project in another area through the state office and CNCS. If after 30 days the project site remains closed and the VISTA has not identified another assignment, the corporation state office would terminate the VISTA for a compelling reason. Another item that passed recently is the VISTA cost of living adjustment. So VISTA recently conducted the department's annual review of VISTA living allowance rates to ensure compliance with the program's governing legislation. The review included a comparison and analysis of the poverty rate and cost of housing in each county where VISTA members and VISTA leaders serve. As a result of this review, certain AmeriCorps VISTA members and VISTA leaders will receive a cost of living allowance increase. My apologies, they already have received a cost of living allowance increase effective July 7th, 2019. The adjusted VISTA living allowance by county table is on the VISTA campus, and the amounts refer to a pre-tax equivalent accrued at the daily rate. And information about where to find this table will be sent out to everyone as a file. And so I did note that certain AmeriCorps VISTA members and VISTA leaders will receive this increase. This year, based on what was adjusted, actually the majority of our members are affected. There are 2 counties which did not have an increase, and those 2 are Monroe County and Palm Beach County. But the other 65 counties in Florida are affected by the cost of living adjustment. So the updated rates began accruing as of July 7th, and these adjustments will be reflected in paychecks of affected members starting in late July 2019. Again, please note that the VISTA living allowance amounts listed on the table on the VISTA campus are a gross pre-tax amount, and the actual pay may vary to reflect the number of days served in a pay period. And another important note is that the increase in living allowances will also be reflected in an increase in sponsor cost share invoices. Julius, I wanted to invite you back to hop on and share some information about the VISTA sponsor convening. Julius has been working very hard over the last few months to help develop the content for this event. Julius, go right ahead.
Alrighty, sorry about that. My microphone was still muted. But yes, I am very excited to talk to you all and give you some couple of quick updates about the VISTA sponsor convening as we are quickly approaching it here within the next less than 2 weeks, as my state program director had mentioned earlier. So to begin off, the VISTA sponsor convening will convene staff from sponsoring organizations for an in-person training event. So there will be VISTA sponsors from over 600 programs across the nation that will all be convening in Orlando to just receive training and go through workshops. And definitely one of the big things to highlight about this that I'm so excited about, there are going to be a lot of opportunities for you all to share with one another. Which I feel is very useful when it comes to being a VISTA program supervisor, because you can always hear the rules and regulations and policies from us and a few technical assisted things every now and then. But there's nothing more than actually hearing from another program who's actually put some things into place and they are actually using some systems that work in real time. So it's going to be great for that as well. The event is going to be July 29th to the 31st. It's going to be at the Hilton Orlando Hotel in Orlando, Florida. The registration is going to open at 10 a.m. on July 29th. And then also I just want to give you all an update with the convening. Excuse me. Either on Tuesday or yesterday, you also received a Gov delivery message. In that message, it just went over a few things. It has a pre-convening survey in there that you all should fill out. And it provides a agenda for the event. With the agenda, it lists everything that's going to be going on, and most importantly, it's going to highlight all of the different workshops that are going to be at the convening. First of all, I want to give a special shout out to a few of our VISTA project sponsors who have volunteered to serve as speakers during this event to just provide some of their input about what their projects are doing, and they're going to be great representatives of Florida. Those people are Mary Matthews, Anna Mitaz, Nancy Flores, and also Jamie Lee Brown. So special shout out to you all for volunteering to speak during these workshops. And I do just want to talk about some of the workshops and list the workshops that will be available at this convening because as Marianne mentioned before, I do serve on a work group that has worked very hard to develop and provide some of the input for the content that's going to be provided and given to you all at the training. And we all put in a lot of hard work and definitely provided a real world view at some things that you all can do, taking into consideration a lot of the challenges that our supervisors consistently deal with. So these workshops are going to be very useful, and I hope that you all take advantage of them. So there's going to be 10 different workshops there, and I'm just going to read through the names of the list of what those different workshop topics are going to be. The first one will be building and sustaining the VISTA member supervisor relationship. Another one will be evaluation and evidence-based programming. Another one will cover the member screening and suitability for service. Another one will cover reporting and data collection. Another one will cover sub-site management. Shameless plug, this is one of the workshops that I had input on, so definitely, go to that one. And the next one, also as well, I had input on with training throughout the VISTA life cycle. Then the next 4 that I have left are go over the VISTA assignment description. The next one, VISTA member recruitment and retention. The next one, VISTA member supervision and management. And then the last one, VISTA project development. So there's a lot of different topics covering a lot of different things that occur within the VISTA world and the everyday project management of the VISTA program for you all. So that is something that I'm very excited for, and I hope that you guys are excited for as well. Also want to note here, there are some things that you all will be required to bring. The first thing, you want to ensure that you bring printed copies of your project's approved application and performance measures. You also want to ensure that you print out a copy of all of your current VADs, VISTA assignment descriptions for your VISTA members. And lastly, in that email, you're going to find hotel information so you can find out all of the different amenities that will be at the hotel for you so you can plan out what you're going to be doing when you're not participating in our workshops. That's all that I have about the convening. Again, we are very excited for this. This is the inaugural version of this convening of this forum, and we are very excited for how it's going to go. And like I said before, the biggest thing that we just want to emphasize is that this is going to be an opportunity for you all as VISTA sponsors, very much so, to communicate with other VISTA sponsors to gain their input, because there's nothing like peer-to-peer support.
Julius, there's a question in the chat for you. It says from Aaron Holland, will the convening be offered yearly?
As of right now, it is TBD, but I do know that they're planning to offer this either yearly or possibly either twice a year. But more details will be coming in the future once that is determined. But it is definitely something that the training unit wants to keep doing in some form or fashion, either twice a year or yearly. We're just not sure about the next dates for sure at this time.
Thank you so much, Julius, for that very informative update. I know I am so excited for the event. For many of the folks in my portfolio, it's going to be the first time that I meet you in person, so it's going to be great. We're really excited to host people from all across the country here in Florida. So. All right. So looking ahead to September, we are 2 months away from the 18th anniversary of September 11th. And as you all know, one of our nation's two national days of service is the September 11th National Day of Service and Remembrance. We encourage all of our projects, AmeriCorps and Senior Corps, to participate in this initiative. And here we have a photo from one of our other partners in the National Service family in Senior Corps. This is the Retired and Senior Volunteer Program of Pinellas County. So one item that I just wanted to highlight that is very crucial when it comes to doing events and taking great high quality photos is branding. So as you prepare for your September 11th service event, we encourage projects to take this as an opportunity to assess whether or not you have the AmeriCorps VISTA gear or signage to help ensure that your photos are well branded with the AmeriCorps logo. And our final formal topic for this morning, this year we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of when CNCS, Senior Corps, and AmeriCorps were all combined under one umbrella to strengthen service and volunteering in communities across our country. In honor of this milestone, CNCS is seeking to recognize your work in local communities by telling your service story. So to make this call for stories a little easier, our Office of External Affairs has suggested a few ideas of what they're looking for. So they're listed on this slide. So they include programs or AmeriCorps members who demonstrate creative solutions or impact, national service as a pathway to opportunity, national service as a, quote, second chance to serve for members of the military and their families, alumni who took their skills to the tech sector, alumni who started their own nonprofit, alumni who are in public service, communities that show their love for AmeriCorps, AmeriCorps as a pathway to education, served by AmeriCorps, then served in AmeriCorps, and intergenerational service, so a parent or a child who also served in AmeriCorps. These are suggestions, but all stories are welcome. Please send us your story with contact information and photos. We have an agency-wide mailbox, National Service 25 at cns.gov. And then also please be sure to CC our office at fl@cns.gov. And we're asking that these stories are submitted by August 1st. A service story is a great story, and we can't wait to hear yours. And so with that, we will move on to the question and answer, the general question and answer portion of the call. Melissa, do we have any pending questions?
Yes, we have a question from Gisela in the chat box. She says, I have a question for the criminal history. Would it be possible that we as a program ask for the applicant to bring a criminal history with them when they apply, as it is very difficult to know if I've had many issues unless with the hope that they are honest. How can we go about getting something to confirm there is no issue until the background check from the AmeriCorps VISTA is cleared? Billy did answer this question for Gisela in the chat as well, but I'll just read her response. Thank you for the question, Gisela. If your organization would like to conduct an additional check, such as a level 2 check on candidates prior to selection, you may do so. In addition, if you have additional background eligibility requirements and or a secondary application, you will want that to be reflected in your listing during the interview process.
And I just want to add something else to that. I wouldn't necessarily ask someone to bring a check or a check that was conducted elsewhere. One, because you have no guarantee that the check was actually done based on their identity, or what organization conducted the check, or the time since that check was connected. So if we definitely, and you all have probably seen this in developing your listings, that there is an area where you can check if your organization has a secondary application. I do know that there are some grantees who do conduct level 2 checks on their VISTA members, or additional background checks on their VISTA members, which is totally allowable. But I would definitely refrain from having them bring something in addition, just because you don't even know how reliable that source of information will be, or if that check was actually done with that particular candidate's biometrics and identity, or if that documentation was doctored. I know some of you all may even have access to which is basically like a clearinghouse for level 2 eligibility. So for those of you who do have access to that particular database, and you have candidates who are within that database, that might also be a tool that you can use to see if they are level 2 eligible. And most likely, if they're level 2 eligible, that means they don't have a murder or a sex offense in their background. However, that doesn't mean that doesn't stop them from having to disclose, because just because you're level 2 eligible doesn't mean that you don't have a criminal background. And the thing that you'll find with clearinghouses is it's going to tell you if it's pass or fail. It's not going to tell you what somebody's background is. So that's why I would say if you want to do an additional background check process, that, of course we do have vendors, that you talk with your county's HR, figure out what vendors you could utilize. We have vendors you could possibly utilize, but that you refrain from accepting anything, and know that a clearinghouse is only going to give you a pass or fail. It's not going to give you specific details which are required in the criminal history disclosure.
Thank you so much, Billy. That's really great information, really great context for our VISTA supervisors. Would invite folks to, again, weigh in in the chat box, or please feel free to ask a question over the line.
Hi, this is Mary. I have one last question, and this is about the virtual member orientations. We're kind of in a predicament. We have people terming out in November, but the last VMO is September. What do I tell these folks? Because they're asking me about how can we bring on Novembers? Do we have to wait until 2020?
Sure, that's a great question, Mary. Thank you so much. So as you all may know, the federal fiscal year ends on September 30th. And so each onboarding cycle reflects the dates that are available between August 1st of one year and then September 30th the following year. So the fiscal year 20 dates have not been announced yet. But we do anticipate that there will be opportunities. In past years, there has been one onboarding date in November and one onboarding date in December. But we're just waiting on VISTA headquarters to release the fiscal year 20 calendar. So,
thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then Mary, I just want to piggyback because I know that sometimes we have this issue with other grantees where you don't necessarily have the space to recruit and backfill those positions that may be terming out in November, and you're not exactly sure, what the next available VMO is going to be. These are conversations you can also absolutely have with your program officer. There are different things that we can do to kind of help with some of that overlap. If you have other vacant slots that you're not looking to fill between some of that overlap, you might want to use those vacant slots to have overlap with members, just because of the timing. Like I said, I know that recruitment is very difficult, and it's easier during some part of the years than other parts of the year. So if that's an issue you're running into where you don't necessarily have the space within your MA for an overlap, and there's an issue with the recruitment cycle and you have candidates ready to go, just reach out to your program officer, because there are certain things that we can do, like making slight amendments to your application so that you can get candidates that are already in the pipeline and ready to go and cannot wait for a later PSO because you don't have space in your MA.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you, Billy.
We do have a question in the chat at this time. Shannon says, if a VISTA supervisor has several VISTAs and is also the site supervisor for many subsites, can that supervisor receive help from a non-VISTA supervisor that is on staff?
Hi, Shannon. Thank you so much for your great question. And Billy, please feel free to also weigh in after I share my thoughts. So, yes, you can definitely work with other people at your agency to manage the VISTA project. One of the key pieces to keep in mind, though, is that the roles and responsibilities are really clearly outlined and that folks are accountable. So one thing that I actually worked on with one of my projects where there are two people that contribute them to the management was having it really clearly in writing to say, that this person is responsible for these roles and that this person contributes to the project in these roles. And that helps me because I know I just have a better understanding of how the project works. And then my hope is that it also helps increase accountability at the level of the sponsor. One thing that is really clear, though, is to keep in mind that we do have one point of contact at your agency. So, that we will not start emailing two people at an agency to try to figure it out. We will still talk to the VISTA supervisor. That is still our main point of contact. And at the end of the day, responsibility for compliance and meeting objectives still rests with that VISTA supervisor. So the VISTA supervisor cannot delegate to the point of, no longer being the final accountable person for how the grant is managed. That has definitely it's not a conversation that we have been able to avoid completely here at the state office. And so, at the end of the day, responsibility for the project still rests with the VISTA supervisor. I do recognize that it is a little bit after 11:30. If folks need to hop off, please feel free to do that, but we'll stick around and keep answering questions until we're done with the questions. Billy, was there anything else that you wanted to add about Shannon's question?
No, you hit the nail on the head. The only thing that I'll say is that when you're working with multiple people, whether they be sub-site supervisors or colleagues at the same level, you just want to make sure everybody has the same information at the same time. Because that's where non-compliance typically happens, where folks are not aware of certain rules and regulations or processes and procedures, and that's where we run into issues. So just making sure that if you are involving other people, that they all have the same information.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for your great question.
Mary Ann, we have another question in the chat from Dorian Gibson. He says, what are the procedures for individuals that may get in trouble with the law during their time as a VISTA? Are background checks only at hiring?
That is a great question, Dorian. Thank you so much. So part of this answer relates a little bit to one of the other topics that Julius highlighted earlier about notices of changes of status. And so a change of status could be, a person is away from their site without leave, maybe they're hospitalized. Arrest is also one of the other items that is noted in the memorandum of agreement. So, so that is another item that needs to be brought to our attention within 24 hours. And then at that time, depending on the circumstances at hand, it's something that we handle on a case-by-case basis. In terms of when do we run background checks, we do only run background checks at the beginning prior to or as part of the onboarding process. We are not conducting additional checks while folks are serving. All right, well, I will do a last call for questions. Do we have any other questions either over the phone or in the chat box?
No other questions pending in the chat at this time.
All right, great. Well, thank you all so much for your time this morning. We all know that everyone is incredibly busy. We really value this opportunity to bring people together and share updates and share best practices and some trends, based on the work that we're doing one-on-one with all of our projects. So thank you all again so much for joining, and also a huge thank you and appreciation to Billy for joining us one last time for a bi-monthly VISTA Supervisor call. We're so grateful to have had not only your professional experience within CNCS, but your personal experience as a VISTA, informing your leadership of this office and how you have coached and trained us in being able to support our projects. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.